It's been 10 years since The Force Awakens, since the beginning of the dark times. We haven't even thought about the movie since part 2 of the series, over 7 months ago. What's that old saying? When the cat is away, the mice will play. And the mouse certainly has been playing. Unfortunately for Mickey Mouse, the cat never left. It's been here at the bread circus, and in the hearts of everyone still carrying the expanded universe torch. Now let's crack open the Force Awakens latrine once more. It's time to deal with the widest guy to have ever stolen Revan's laundry.
Do you have something, a towel or something you can put on?
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Previously, on the bread circus, we watched stormtroopers set fire to a village. Somehow, this will help them search for a valuable object. Our hero of the Not Rebellion shot some stormtroopers. Somehow, this drew blood without causing wounds. But the skirmish is about to be interrupted.
We have a new enemy, the son of Skywalker.
Poe Dameron ceases firing. He's already made half of his plot-relevant shots. The second one is coming up very soon. Poe looks up to see a spaceship landing in the village. It swoops down like a giant bird of prey. Clearly, that was one of the design goals for this vessel, both in our galaxy and theirs. This is also when we get introduced to Kylo's theme. As a vaguely scary song, it's quite functional, but it certainly isn't as catchy as the Imperial March. Nobody will end up absent-mindedly humming this song, but that kind of analysis is best left to a musician. Before we see the shuttle's passenger, we return to the village. Stormtroopers are rounding up the locals, at least the ones that haven't yet been set on fire. It also turns out that stormtroopers are not allowed panic breaks. Someone noticed the guy with blood streaks on his helmet. He was standing around, not even pretending to fight. A trooper with an orange pauldron went to retrieve him. Bloodstreak was ordered to stay out in the open. Most likely, they want to keep track of him. The pauldron is an interesting detail. They indicate a person of some importance. Obviously, every stormtrooper has some shoulder protection. The pauldron we're talking about is much larger, a rank indicator. These were used in Star Wars, with 3 major colors. Black for an enlisted stormtrooper, white for a sergeant. The most visible was the orange pauldron of a commander. We assume the orange covers all the higher ranks. In the reboot universe, they imitated these pauldrons. However, it was done without looking up the terms involved. The First Order uses white, black, and orange pauldrons. White for squad leader, black for sergeant, orange for officer. The problem is that these all mean the same thing. A sergeant is an officer whose role is to lead a squad. The orange one can be salvaged, since there are other kinds of officer. However, the black and white ones are fundamentally broken. A sergeant is a squad leader. Either one makes sense, but not both. Remove the black pauldron and give white its proper name. That is to say, use the original ranks from the expanded universe. Imagine how many people had to sign off on this, and none of them did any research. The camera moves back to the shuttle, which has now finished landing. Its boarding ramp is down, and jets of smoke fill the area. An evil guy dressed in black strides down the ramp. Like the shuttle itself, this is a blatant reference. It's not intended for the most dedicated fans to figure this out. The movie is figuratively beating you over the head with it.
And that's really something that we've tried to do.
These overt references are meant to hook anyone who vaguely remembers the OT. In fact, the more you know, the less effective these imitation scenes are.
There's a lot to consider, but I couldn't be more grateful and I couldn't be more comforted by the company I'm in.
One thing is perfectly clear. This guy is Vader. He's not actually Darth Vader, but the movie demands this comparison. We aren't dealing with a minor similarity. The presentation is not like Vader, except with X instead of Y. The movie will start to differentiate them later on. For now, he is presented as the sequel to Vader, the Vader of the sequels.
We're doing a sequel. That's what we do in Hollywood.
At the foot of the ramp, he looks around for a moment. That helps the audience see him during his introduction. It also makes perfect sense in universe. Let's do what the movie wants us to. Compare this scene to Return of the Jedi. Aboard the Death Star, there was a formal parade. The station's commander walked out to greet Lord Vader. There's no reason for Vader to go looking for anything. If his shuttle landed a meter to the left, it would make no difference. The troopers would always line up in front of the ramp. This new fellow, Kylo Ren, does not have that luxury. He landed in the middle of a war zone. There are no orderly formations waiting for him. He truly does need to look around to find anything. Some of you can sympathize with Kylo.
Don't be afraid. I feel it too.
It's embarrassing when you lose track of what you're doing and who you're doing it with. With Odo, the First Order will be operating like a well-oiled machine in no time.
The end of this order.
Odo is an all-in-one management software offering several dozen applications. To organize your galactic conquest, perhaps the CRM tool would help. It also works if your organization is more ethical than the First Order.
The evil I could tolerate, but the stupidity.
With the Odo CRM, leads are captured automatically. If you get an email offering the map to Skywalker, Odo CRM will track that opportunity. These are presented in an overview showing priority, contact details, expected revenue. In the Kanban view, opportunities are grouped by stage. Drag and drop them on the pipeline to move them between stages. All communication goes through a single place, making it easy to keep track of history. This allows you to safely plan all your next activities. Meetings, calls, mailings, etc. All centralized for simple and efficient management. Quotes can simply be created from the opportunity itself. Your customer's data will be added automatically. Products can be added to the quote manually or selected from the catalog. Send the quote to your client. He can accept and pay for it from the customer portal. Analyze your performance from personalized dashboards. Predict your results with revenue estimates. The first Odo application is free for life, but they work even better when you have the full set. With a modest subscription, your entire Odo suite can be fully armed and operational. Try Odo today. As far as we can tell, Kylo is looking for Braytak. That was the entire motivation behind raiding the village. Braytak has a clue to where Luke is hiding. Poe and Kylo have both come to retrieve that. It seems the stormtroopers were briefed on this in advance. One of the squad leaders has captured Braytak. Kylo walks up to him and says something insulting. That reveals another parallel to Darth Vader. Behind the mask, he has a voice modulator.
You mean the murderers, traitors, and thieves you call friends?
It's quite a different effect, but that's acceptable.
Hibernation sickness.
Someone as rude as Kylo might say his voice is inferior. That's why he needs filters to get anywhere near Vader's level. More interesting is what he uses this voice to say. He opens the conversation by telling the old man that he is old.
Look how old you've become.
Imagine if Vader's first line was to insult Leia's hairstyle. That doesn't sound very intimidating, does it? Trying to hurt the feelings of your enemy. It's the sort of behavior you'd expect from a handmaiden or protocol droid.
Don't you call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease. Now come out before somebody sees you.
Kylo is not completely harmless. He can actually hurt people instead of just offending them. Luckily, this does make sense in context.
I'm old.
Their conversation reveals that these two know each other. At some point in the past, the old man was less old. We don't have any information on when or how they knew each other. All we can do is infer the possible range. They must have been out of contact for at least 5 years. Otherwise, Braytak wouldn't have aged visibly. The child in the Halloween costume also puts a limit on the timeline. He can't be older than about 30 years. To remember each other, Kylo would need to have been at least 5 years old. Our range is now 5 to 25 years. As we will later learn, the First Order has been active for at least 20 years. That seems like the natural choice. Kylo and Braytak were friendly 20 years ago.
And he was a good friend.
Then, when Kylo was 5 or 10, he left for evil school. That's what Braytak means by
Something far worse has happened to you.
those who join the dark side rarely survive into old age. It would be nice if we knew anything about this relationship. Braytak appears to be stalling for time. Kylo begins the substantial conversation with,
You know what I've come for.
Functionally, this is equivalent to one of Vader's lines.
You weren't on any mercy mission this time. Several transmissions were beamed to the ship by rebel spies.
We all know the plot item was in this location recently. Where Leia denied all knowledge, Braytak chose to deflect.
I know where you come from. before you called yourself Kylo Ren.
This is very convenient for the audience. It tells us two things. First, that Kylo Ren is named Kylo Ren. Second, that he used to have another name. Braytak isn't quite based enough to say his real name. Kylo continues on as if nothing has happened. He reveals that everyone is looking for a map.
The map to Skywalker.
Instead of Death Star plans, we are chasing the map to Skywalker. That concept will need an autopsy of its own when we get there.
Is it still illegal to perform an autopsy on a living person?
Kylo mentions that Braytak found the map.
We know you found it.
This is another case where it would be nice to know, well, anything. The movie will never return to this plot point. Was the map in Braytak's village? Did he leave the planet? And if so, in what starship? The only possibility ruled out is keeping secrets. Braytak wasn't looking after this map for decades. He only just found it, somehow and somewhere. According to the opening crawl, everybody wants Skywalker. Leia and the New Rebellion think he might be useful. The First Order wants to find and then destroy him. Kylo helpfully name-drops his faction, in case you didn't read the crawl. What's interesting is that he phrases his demand in terms of the group. He doesn't yell, "Give the map to me."
And now you're going to give it to the First Order.
This map is going to the First Order, and Kylo is here on their behalf. That would be an excellent part of Kylo's character. He sees himself as part of the First Order, not above it. Unfortunately, that is not part of his character. Braytak continues deflecting the conversation.
The First Order rose from the dark side.
He claims that the First Order rose from the dark side of the Force. Mostly, this serves his next point. Kylo was converted to the darkness.
You did not.
However, we should examine this claim. The opening crawl tells us the First Order rose from the Empire. Now, it's possible that Braytak or JJ got confused. The Empire used to be the bad guys, right? And the Darkside dudes were also the bad guys. That must mean the Empire is the same thing as the Darkside. But in actual fact, the Empire is just the Republic. It's a government that has no relation to the Force. Now, it's possible that Braytak is giving us new information. The opening crawl told us that the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire, but maybe the First Order is explicitly a Darkside faction, not just led by a Sith Lord. They are dark to their core. This would be an interesting idea, a faction that is knowingly serving the Darkside. Even though the Stormtroopers aren't Force-sensitive, they still recite the Sith Code 10 times a day. Everyone is encouraged to betray and murder their immediate superior. It could make for an interesting enemy, not just a rebooted empire. Oddly, Kylo gets upset at this mention of his past, the implication that he isn't as dark as the First Order. We wouldn't expect him to act this way. Loads of people on the dark side had previously been light side. That's not even slightly remarkable.
You know, milady, Count Dooku was once a Jedi.
Also, Kylo started the conversation with insults. Now he's the one getting offended by something inoffensive. This isn't how the Sith behave. They say, "Yes, that's right, I used to be weak, but now I have more knowledge and power than any Jedi.
I've become more powerful than any Jedi."
It was only Vader who denied his previous identity. Even he wasn't offended by getting called Anakin.
You were once Anakin Skywalker, my father.
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
This one isn't necessarily a flaw or mistake. Perhaps that's just how Kylo is. He likes insults, but is thin-skinned.
How do you think it affects the culture of a community, of a project, when the leader is telling people in response to patch reviews that they should be retroactively aborted?
Fuck you. He's worried that he won't be taken seriously if anyone knows his origin. It's a bit of a silly reaction, but it is consistent with his character. Kylo replies,
"I'll show you the dark side."
This doesn't even address what Braytak said. The old wizard pointed out that Kylo used to be light. He never denied that Kylo can wield the dark side. Showing a bit of darkness proves nothing. The next line from Braytak is also a non sequitur. He replies,
"You may try."
Bonus points for quoting Anakin, even if accidentally. But it doesn't make sense in this context.
"I will do what I must."
You will try.
When Anakin says that, he means, "I'm going to win this fight." The equivalent here is saying that Kylo can't use the dark side. If he manages to angrily lift a single grain of sand, that is success. The other interpretation is that Braytak will win this fight. Spoiler alert, no he won't. Broadly speaking, this conversation is two people talking past each other. Each line is barely related to what came before. There is a way to explain this such that it all makes sense. We simply need to assume Braytak is a social duelist.
Boy, are you ugly! I'm insulted you'd even try to use that insult on me!
Kylo turns up and tries to insult and intimidate the old man. Braytak spends the whole time manipulating and provoking him. In a moment, this will lead to Braytak's death. This, we assume, is exactly what he wanted. Dead men tell no tales. If Kylo executes him, interrogation is off the table. Everything he knows about Poe will stay secret. The trail goes cold, along with Braytak's body. This would explain why he brings up Kylo's family.
But you cannot deny the truth that is your family.
There was no way that would end well. This moment also gives us Kylo's best line so far.
You're so right.
Okay, so the line itself is pretty terrible. All the good points come from its context. Braytak says Kylo can't deny his family. The intention is, hey, you're related to good people. Try being good. But what you don't know on first viewing is that Kylo is related to Darth Vader. Kylo's response reframes the family connection. Instead of getting inspired to be good, he focuses on the darkness.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
Kylo ignites his special saber. We'll have to take that apart one day, but not just yet. Kylo is here to show off a very special dark side power. He changes the camera angle 4 times in 2 seconds. This technique was created by Darth Abrams. Its intention is to disorient and confuse the target. When used correctly, it can also hide bad choreography. Some say it was inspired by the methods of Darth Shaky Cam. In our attempts at reconstructing this scene, we think a saber was lifted. Then at some point, it came down again. Since Braytak is dead afterwards, the blade probably touched him. That's about all we can say for sure. As soon as Braytak is dead, something unexpected happens. We cut to Poe Dameron, standing out in the open. Before Kylo's shuttle landed, Poe had been in cover. This was a very sensible firing position. Lying on a sand dune, Poe had a much smaller target profile. He also had the option of hunkering down completely. Everything seemed to be going well for Poe. He was picking off stormtroopers easily. Next time we see him, he's completely exposed. Even if the fighting is over, that's a bad move. After not firing a shot for several minutes, Poe raises his rifle. Perhaps he was waiting for a clear shot against Kylo. No matter how you look at it, this was not a good tactical decision. What benefit did he get from leaving cover? Perhaps a different angle. That's a pretty minimal benefit, not worth it. What did he expect to happen after firing? Those 80 stormtroopers will blast him immediately. Best case scenario, he gets a 1-for-1 trade. Kylo and Poe both die right here. Poe's mission fails. The First Order get the map. But maybe, just maybe, the death of Kylo makes up for it. Except that Kylo survived this attempt. Just before the trigger is pulled, Kylo turns around. This fits perfectly with the abilities of Force users. During combat, they get about 2 seconds of foresight. It would be strange if Kylo didn't feel this coming. What's unexpected is how Kylo responds. From a Jedi, we would expect one of 2 actions. Either a dodge or a parry, deflecting the blaster bolt with a lightsaber, or stepping aside to let the bolt pass by. Over on the dark side, they might be more offensive, preventing the blaster from being fired in the first place, frying the blaster using force lightning, crushing the mechanism with telekinesis, or removing Poe's trigger finger. Any of these would be unexpected, but plausible. They would look interesting and be unique. However Kylo handled this, it would tell us about his character. Force lightning is an advanced technique. That would mean Kylo is well trained. Telekinesis is basic, but versatile. That would show Kylo as pragmatic. What happens in the movie is none of these options. You might even say our expectations were subverted. Kylo waves his hand around a bit, which stops time. Poe and the blaster bolt are both paused, or at least mostly. They do move a little bit. Clearly, this doesn't actually freeze time. It's more like using telekinesis to hold them in place. But that would be unnecessarily complex. Any lapse of concentration would be dangerous. The blaster bolt wants to escape through any weak point it can find. Poe wants to escape too, but he's not as capable. Pausing the blaster bolt is certainly unexpected. However, it has a lot of implications. Let's tackle the obvious one first. Out of universe, someone thought it looked cool.
Knights of Ren. cool.
That, in itself, is not a problem. Star Wars is full of things that look cool. From a movie-making perspective, it has some advantages. You can use the blaster bolt as a light source. The camera could move around the frozen bolt. Maybe this would have been difficult to do in 1980. That would make it a showcase of new technologies. This is where we run out of positive things to say. Freezing the bolt tells us a lot about Kylo. We know that he doesn't want the bolt to hit him. The alternative would have been very interesting. For Kylo to stand there and take a blast to the face. That would show off the armor his mask is made from. It would imply that he's nearly invulnerable. Quite an intimidating first impression.
That armor's too strong for blasters.
Much more impressive than cutting down an old man. But maybe that's not what they were going for. Maybe Kylo is meant to appear weak instead of strong. Freezing the bolt implies he can't dodge or deflect it. That would be even more interesting. A Force user who is weak to blasters. Perhaps he doesn't have the discipline to parry those bolts. Maybe he can do it sometimes, but it's unreliable. It could even be a property of his serrated lightsaber. That might work better in a duel, but worse against blasters. Whatever the reason, this would be fascinating. A dark Jedi who is vulnerable to ordinary blasters. Of course, there's one really important comparison. We've seen one memorable case of a Darksider versus a blaster. The Banquet of Cloud City. Lord Vader is sitting at the head of the table. Han has a clear line of sight. He draws his pistol and fires at Vader. There is no dodging, no deflection. The blaster bolts do not stop in midair. Vader expected this to happen, and he is not even remotely concerned. He allows Han to fire many shots before disarming him. The volley goes on long enough to establish that this won't work. Snatching the blaster proves Vader could end this at any time. Vader is demonstrating that he's invulnerable. He never draws a weapon or shows concern. The dining room does not put him at an advantage. Vader allows Han to shoot first. He shows that he, alone, can defeat them. Vader was always going to win this encounter.
You are beaten. It is useless to resist.
After crushing their hope, he reveals the stormtroopers. This is an understated, unmistakable display of power. In the best-case scenario, Vader's hand is destroyed. He allowed that to happen and installed a replacement. More likely, Vader suffered no damage at all. Kylo cannot claim the same. He obviously fears the blaster bolt. This means he cannot reliably absorb it. Vader spent more decades learning than Kylo has been alive. It makes sense that training might lead to skill mastery.
No, no, no!
Is that a boyfriend?
No!
Since Kylo can't withstand the bolt, he has to do something else. That may be combined with his inability to parry and dodge projectiles. Kylo needs to do something else. But to avoid looking weak, he needs to make it flashy. This aligns with the goals from behind the scenes, making Kylo look cool and different.
Low profile.
Now, there is one other option to consider. What if there was a good reason to freeze the bolt? Something unique that can't be accomplished any other way. There are not too many options for this. The blaster bolt can't be stored and kept until next week, nor are they uncommon. The galaxy is full of blasters. The only angle is that Poe pulled the trigger. To make this work, we need to move some things around. Here's how we fix it. Like in the movie, Poe fires and Kylo freezes the bolt. There's no reason to have Poe abandon his cover, so he won't do that.
I have decided that we shall stay here.
Kylo should still be able to restrain Poe. Then stormtroopers go and retrieve the pilot. What really makes this version better is what happens next. We need to put something of value in the path of that bolt. Poe is very aware that he fired this bolt. If that hits anything, Poe is responsible. At least partially, even if Kylo changes the target. Which brings us to what, exactly, we put in harm's way. The simplest choice is Poe himself. Stormtroopers drag him to where Kylo was standing earlier. Far more interesting than just ignoring the bolt for the rest of the scene. However, Poe is the least fun object to threaten. It's better to have Poe upset on behalf of something else. Poe abandoned his cover. He's not into self-preservation.
Perhaps I can find new ways to motivate them.
One decent option would be a random villager. We can assume Poe wants them to stay alive. Perhaps the most interesting is to put Braytak there. For that to be compelling, he needs to be alive. That means we sacrifice something great about his death. In the movie, Braytak goads Kylo into killing him. If we want Braytak alive, Poe fires slightly sooner. Kylo is interrupted before swinging his sword. Braytak is disappointed by this. He failed. Poe also failed to escape with the map.
Unfortunate that you rushed to face him.
This reckless decision will not save Braytak's life. All it accomplished was to get Poe captured. In the end, this wouldn't change anything about the movie. Poe looks a little more competent, less reckless. Kylo comes across far better than in the original. His use of a new power is both creative and cruel. Braytak gets another 15 seconds of screen time. At some point during the interrogation, Kylo releases the bolt. The old man dies. Poe is captured. It all adds up to exactly the same outcome as before. Speaking of which, it's time to interrogate Poe Dameron. He's been frozen ever since pulling the trigger. We can tell this isn't a form of stasis because he's still moving around. A pair of stormtroopers run forward to retrieve him. One of them gently nudges Poe in the gut. This might be the least convincing stunt we've seen in the entire movie. Which isn't saying much. We aren't even 8 minutes in. But surely it would be hard to surpass this one. Poe is marched forward to meet with Kylo. A kick to the back of the leg forces him to his knees. This is a very sensible move from the stormtroopers. It's much harder for someone to run off if he needs to stand up first. As a consequence, Kylo also needs to squat down. He spends a few seconds studying the newcomer. This chap is not dressed like one of the villagers. It's not hard to guess he was the pilot for that X-Wing. Though maybe they don't need to guess. The First Order might have been tracking Poe's ship.
If we can find it on our scanners, the First Order's not far behind.
Or they intercepted a transmission meant for him. Based on the movie, it seems to be just a coincidence. Poe and Kylo just happened to be in the same place at the same time. Explaining this in the movie would have been a good idea. That would make it clear the new rebellion destroyed the village. Not directly, but they led the First Order here. Poe is very uncomfortable with this. He finds the silence to be awkward. Trying to lighten the mood, he starts cracking jokes.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
This is because Poe has spent too much time watching Marvel movies.
So, is anybody gonna talk about what just happened?
Some say Poe got this way after many hours of torture, but we already covered that under Marvel movies. This attempt at levity undermines two characters at once. Poe doesn't look any better from this. He doesn't come across as scared out of his mind.
Ouch time!
In that case, the humor would be a coping mechanism, the only way he can handle the terror of this situation. But Poe doesn't actually look very scared. On the other hand, we could frame Poe as confident. He's so arrogant that he makes Han seem modest.
Not a bad bit of rescuing, huh? You know, sometimes I amaze even myself.
When he gets captured, he's absolutely certain he'll be fine. Somehow he'll escape, and everything will work out for the best. This is a valid characterization for Leia's most daring pilot. However, that's also not what we see in the movie. He isn't joking with the stormtroopers on the way to Kylo. This scene doesn't show him grinning the entire time.
Oh, this is going to be easy.
Poe doesn't show terror, and he doesn't show confidence. His jokes convey total apathy, and they inspire the same from the audience. Obviously, Kylo doesn't matter, and neither does Poe's life. The other character undermined by these jokes is Kylo. It's hard to say how intentional this was. We've seen other characters who want to be taken seriously.
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous.
Teenage Anakin, for example, and young Luke. What these have in common is that they aren't the main villain. The closest comparison is Darth Maul. Relatively young and inexperienced, but still imposing. He presents a real threat, and everyone takes him seriously. Kylo might have worked without this scene, but now he's a joke. Poe makes a second joke about not being able to hear Kylo.
Very hard to understand you with all the apparatus.
That makes perfect sense behind the scenes. The acoustics of that mask cannot be ideal. Other actors probably have a hard time hearing him. However, this makes no sense in-universe. It's very obvious that Kylo has a voice filter. Anything he says behind the mask is relayed to the outside. It's not plausible that Poe would have trouble hearing because of the mask. A far more sensible taunt would have been mocking the voice. To say that Kylo is hiding his natural voice.
I am El Plago, el jefe de los oscuros, the plague of the border, and
the wrestling of Edenson.
That even after the filters, he still sounds like a teenager.
It's not fair.
This would have made sense and been remotely funny. As before, Kylo isn't having a real conversation. The two sides are talking past each other. What's surprising is that both times Kylo is the more coherent. After 10 seconds of thinking, he figures out what happened. This outsider is here to collect the map. Since Braytak didn't have it, it was handed over already.
Your man gave it to you.
It's perfectly reasonable for Kylo to figure this out, as long as he knows about the X-Wing and can recognize clothing. There's no reason for Kylo to be confused about this sequence of events, much like how Vader realized where the Death Star plans went.
The battle station plans are not aboard this ship.
She must have hidden the plans in the escape pod.
Kylo orders the pilot to be searched.
Search him.
Within 10 seconds, the stormtroopers decide the map is gone.
Nothing, sir. Put him on board.
Apparently, those helmets come with X-ray vision. Poe is wearing a thick jacket, and the troopers have gloves. There's no way a simple pat-down can rule out all data storage. R2 was given an extremely thin data card. That could be hidden anywhere in Poe's clothing. Kylo makes the only rational decision. Load the prisoner onto the shuttles and take him into orbit. They can search him properly aboard the Star Destroyer. We can assume the First Order will maintain control of the village. If the map was stashed in the sand, they'll find it. Searching might take a day or few, but it's doable. Poe is marched off toward one of the landing craft. As he leaves, we spot a shiny silver stormtrooper.
Sir, the villagers.
For the most part, we shall ignore her. There are barely enough scenes to examine, and this is her first one. We would need to know a bit more about First Order stormtroopers. Captain Plasma is here to mention the villagers. Even if these are just civilians, you don't want to hold them indefinitely. Predictably, Kylo goes for the quick and easy path.
Kill them immediately.
Wipe them out. All of them.
Here's where we get into some nuance.
Kill them all.
We at the circus condemn this action. Executing the villagers, obviously that's the right choice, but shooting them is the wrong way to go about it. Remember, you're searching for a small data storage device. What happens if a blaster bolt hits that map?
I think I just blasted it.
Granted, Kylo has every reason to believe that Poe had the map, but as far as he can tell, Poe no longer has it. That means it could be stashed anywhere in the village, including the locals. If you truly want that map, you would take precautions. Avoid hitting any potential hiding spot with weapons. That means any old man, X-Wing, or villager. You may also want to avoid setting fire to the village. Is the First Order meant to be foolish for causing this much destruction? It's as if the writer and the audience know the map is safe. Therefore, the bad guys are free to be careless. Whatever the risks are, Kylo demands an execution. The shiny stormtrooper gives the order to fire.
On my command. Fire!
Ordinary troopers line up and level their blaster rifles. This includes the one with a blood streak on his helmet. When the others are firing, this one conspicuously does not. He isn't even pretending to follow orders. It would be easy to open fire but miss every shot. Nobody would notice he was the source of every miss. Especially if these troopers can't aim. Given the people behind this movie, they probably can't. Of all the stormtroopers, Bloodstreak is the only one aiming. He has the rifle up in front of his eye to look through the scope. This technique is known to increase one's accuracy. However, at this range, it's not really necessary. The villagers are only meters away, and there are quite a few of them. With even the slightest bit of training, you wouldn't need the sights. Aiming properly would only be needed to hit specific body parts, to avoid destroying a certain map, for example. During the slaughter, Poe is marched into the lander. He seems a little upset with this outcome. More about the villagers dying than his capture. At least the First Order is efficient about this. After only a few seconds, the job is done. The Stormtrooper firing squad has dispersed. Only Bloodstreak is left standing around. The others are at least pretending to be busy. Kylo stops to stare at the Deviant for a few seconds. Eventually, he starts walking back to his shuttle. This is when the blaster bolt unfreezes, hitting nothing. A couple of stormtroopers are startled. That is the only consequence of stopping the bolt. For now, the village raid is over. All that remains is to tie up some loose ends. By far the largest of these is Poe's X-Wing. Apparently, the stormtroopers have already searched it. They are certain that nothing of value will be lost by destroying it. 3 stormtroopers crest the nearby sand dune, 1 with a repeating mega blaster, 2 with rifles. They open fire on the X-Wing, which promptly explodes. We've already mentioned that it's strange for a ship to be so fragile. Disabling one ought to require anti-vehicle weapons. Even those are usually designed to cripple the fighter. It might fall out of the sky, but the fuselage will be intact. To destroy a fighter, they should use demolition charges.
Throw me another charge.
Like the proton grenades used on the Endor bunker, these are already set up to work as limpet mines. Slap one on the right place, and the X-Wing disappears. That's even more exciting than just shooting it. This way, the First Order looks competent and prepared. When the explosion goes off, the movie cuts to BB-8. He observes the explosion and warbles sadly. To our eyes, nothing indicates it was an X-Wing. Kylo's shuttle and the landers are also present. If one of those exploded, it should look fairly similar. Whatever the source of the explosion, it's bad news. The astromech trundles away through the sand dunes. As he passes the nearby ridge, a head pops up from behind. With its glowing red eyes, it seems a bit ominous. This is a Night Watcher worm. Probably not a threat, so long as you're made of metal. With a wipe transition, we move from BB-8 to orbit. Kylo's shuttle is flying up from the surface, heading for his Star Destroyer. All 4 of the landers are right on his tail. From this shot alone, we can learn something interesting. Whatever they did on the surface, it didn't take very long. Kylo waited for all the stormtroopers to board the transports. That includes any bodies if they recovered those. With a bit of discipline, they could be ready to leave quickly. Kylo doesn't come across as a particularly patient chap. It's unlikely he would sit in his shuttle for an hour, just waiting. There's nothing for him to plausibly do during that time either. Most likely scenario, he waits for a few minutes. Then the shuttle and troop transports all fly back together. That means they abandon the village without searching it. They certainly don't go looking for Poe's astromech. This allows the rest of the movie to take place. The First Order is not making the most optimal decisions. It would have been fairly easy to surround the village. They could move in, take prisoners, search for clues, sweep every hut and tear apart every garment. That would ensure they find the map, if it was in the village. Instead, they decided to burn everything down, slaughter the inhabitants without asking questions, and then they leave immediately. This makes perfect sense if you're chasing down thousands of leads. Almost none of them pan out, so you move on quickly. However, if we bring in knowledge from later in the movie, that's not true. The First Order stays in orbit of this planet for some time. They are actively searching for the map across a much wider area. There's no reason for them to be so hasty. It would have been better to call in processing teams. Leave some stormtroopers there to maintain control, but also call in some shuttles full of prisoner cages. Show the villagers getting herded into those and transported back to orbit. That way you can show the cruelty of the First Order. Rows of cells and torture chambers for the villagers. The shuttle convoy flies up to a Star Destroyer waiting in orbit. Now is not the time to analyze this ship. We'll see more of it later in the movie. For now, we cut to one of its hangars. The walls are full of TIE fighters. At least 2 of the landing ships arrive here. There's no sign of Kylo's shuttle, which makes sense. He probably has a private hangar next to his bedroom. There is plenty of hangar space on this model of Star Destroyer. The other 2 landers are probably in a different hangar again. There's a clever trick here, used to speed up the pacing of the movie. Inside the hangar, we see one transport fly in to land. The camera is already panning in order to track this ship. Then it gets obscured by another AAL in the foreground. This one has already landed. Its ramp goes down as we watch. At least so far, this is the most clever shot in the movie. We could have followed one transport as it lands and opens the ramp. By using 2 of them, we get the same result slightly faster. A fantastic decision. We applaud whoever came up with it. The lander that takes focus is currently the most interesting. This is the one that Poe was dragged into. Previously, there were always 2 stormtroopers escorting him. After the flight up, he only gets 1 trooper. It's not really a problem, since he's deep in enemy territory. This hangar must have at least 100 troopers. There are supposed to be 8,000 on the ship. What's he going to do, run away?
Run!
Hijack a TIE fighter and fly to the nearest planet? Of course, the First Order aren't handling this well. This is not an effective means to secure your prisoner. The only thing keeping Poe under control is all the blasters. He knows he'll be shot if he tries to escape. This incompetence implies they don't take prisoners.
Send a distress signal, and then inform the Senate that all aboard were killed.
Stormtroopers aren't trained for this. They don't have the equipment for it. They weren't expecting a captive. A policy of taking no prisoners does sound a little scary. Upon closer inspection, it does seem that Poe is restrained. His wrists are bound together by a set of handcuffs, so it seems the First Order is somewhat prepared for prisoners. There's just one enormous, gaping problem with the restraints. Handcuffs work based on two principles. The two cuffs are connected by a sturdy chain or bar. Each cuff is also a strong loop that goes around the wrist. They need to be tight enough that hands cannot slip through. Now take a look at the First Order binders. These look very strong. You can't break those cuffs. However, they are extremely loose. At any moment, Poe could just pull his hand out of them. It seems like a struggle for the actor to keep his binders on. Compare this to some of the other binders we've seen. Luke in Palpatine's throne room, Palpatine aboard the Invisible Hand, Chewbacca on the Death Star, Jar Jar Binks in Ota Gunga. All of these are tight enough to be functional, or at least close enough to look functional. This failure should not have made it to the screen. There was plenty of source material to copy. Also, it should be obvious that loose cuffs don't work. The Resistance pilot objects to his treatment. You might even say he's resistancing arrest.
All right.
It seems as if he wants to wander on his own. Once again, this is a strange way to behave. If he was truly afraid of the troopers, he wouldn't be causing trouble. We could imagine a more confident and charismatic version. He might be able to intimidate the troopers or negotiate. Ace Rimmer would get to walk anywhere he wanted.
Some people might say it's the devilishly brave and handsome guy in the cockpit that did it.
Dish pshaw nonsense.
Poe is somewhere in the middle. He doesn't take the threat seriously. And yet here he is, captured and on his way to a cell. Is that a flaw with the character or the writer? Poe seems to be quite impressed with the inside of the Star Destroyer. For a moment, it looks like he recognizes something off-screen, but then he looks around with the same awestruck expression. As far as we can tell, the movie doesn't follow up on this. We can see and hear a mouse droid roaming the hangar. According to the VD, this is exactly the same model as the original trilogy. A little strange given the other changes in the galaxy, but the circus is always happy to see more mouse droids. As Poe walks out of frame, a dirty stormtrooper appears. Why is he covered in dirt when none of the others are? The one escorting Poe has relatively clean armor. It's hard to tell which ones even visited the surface. This one is Bloodstreak, but that doesn't explain it. He wasn't exposed to more dirt than anyone else. Last time we saw him on the planet, he was clean. The only explanation could be that he was bullied by other troopers. They rolled him around in the sand for a while. This trooper still appears to be having a hard time. He doesn't behave naturally, and he walks onto a landing ship. The troopers walking down the ramp don't give him a second glance. Perhaps this is a normal thing to do. For all they know, his grappling hook fell out of its pouch. His actual motive seems to be privacy. After walking a few meters deep, he removes his helmet. This serves two purposes. Mostly it's for the audience. They get to see one of the new main characters.
You looked at me like no one ever had.
Bloodstreak also wants to hyperventilate for a while. Sadly, his panic time will be interrupted. The shiny silver stormtrooper is right behind him. She was hiding conveniently out of frame. This is also when we get a name for Bloodstreak. She addresses him as FN2187.
FN2187.
This is a perfectly reasonable ID number. The only one spoken in the movies is TK421.
TK421, why aren't you at your post? TK421, do you copy?
That had a 3-digit number instead of 4. Extending the serial number range in a sequel is logical. Shiny Silver Stormtrooper also has a message. She wants to inspect his blaster rifle. His behavior on the surface did not go unnoticed.
Submit your blaster for inspection.
There are two possibilities for this blaster inspection. Either this is standard procedure, or it isn't. The former would mean he's trying to hide his weapon. That's already suspicious behavior. Alternatively, he was singled out for inspection. Either way, they've found him. This scene also tells us that ordinal troopers may not remove their helmet, or perhaps the term would be firstinal, whatever the equivalent of Imperial would be for the First Order.
And who gave you permission to remove that helmet?
This detail brings to mind a bit of old Stormtrooper lore. In the West End RPG, there was a secret system built into Stormtrooper armor. Attempting to remove a Stormtrooper's helmet will set off a silent alarm. The rest of the garrison will know that something is wrong. This also prevents the use of comlinks in captured helmets. When a trooper removes the helmet himself, he needs to press a hidden button. That disables the alarm system. There appears to be no such system for the First Order. It's just against regulations to have your helmet off. We can assume the helmets aren't needed while off duty. It would be hard to eat and sleep with a helmet on. Bloodstreak hasn't officially clocked out of work yet. That would probably also mean turning his rifle into the armory, where they would notice it hasn't been fired. And they will surely keep track of serial numbers. Which rifle goes to which trooper? Shiny Silver commands him to report to her division.
I'm sorry, Captain.
Report to my division at once.
How strange, she seems to already be in command. A division ought to be a group of soldiers. If they were both down on the surface, he's already part of her division. Possibly, division refers to some part of the ship, or a set of officers responsible for discipline. Bloodstreak puts his helmet back on. We shall deal with his story later. When we next do one of these videos, it will concern the Scavenger. This section of the movie has one interesting vehicle. Kylo has a shuttle that looks rather familiar. We happen to know that this model is the Upsilon class. That confirms what had always been obvious. This one is based on the Lambda class shuttle. It has been changed significantly from the inspiration. None of the parts are identical, or even very similar. The closest would be the boarding ramp. It looks and functions about the same. That is to say, it's a ramp with smoke machines. The biggest deviation is the hull. Only the most basic elements carry over to the Upsilon. For example, the cockpit is at the front, just like the Lambda. Both shuttles are wider than they are tall. Aside from that, almost every detail is different. That's not a bad thing, since the new hull still makes sense. It is hard to figure out the interior layout. Where, exactly, do the passengers and machinery go? This problem applies almost as strongly to the Lambda class. So far, the Upsilon is no better or worse. Another noteworthy difference is the engines. In each case, the ship has a matching pair. On the Lambda, they are quite large, rounded rectangles. They take up a considerable fraction of the aft surface. On the Upsilon, the engines are small and circular. Relative to the ship, these are absolutely tiny. By default, we would assume the Upsilon is slower and less agile. To avoid that, you'd have to invoke new technology. Perhaps the Upsilon gets decent performance from much smaller engines. One system on the Lambda and Upsilon is never used. Both models have a clearly visible set of laser cannons. If you needed a heavy starfighter, these shuttles would almost be good enough. However, these shuttles usually carry important people. That means they should come with a fighter escort. There are very few hazards that a Lambda could shoot its way out of. One pilot in a decent starfighter should outfly the shuttle. A combat corvette will completely overwhelm it. The weapons are just enough to make someone think twice. This gets worse when we look at the Upsilon class. Weaponry on the Lambda is actually quite good. It has 2 twin blaster cannons and 2 twin laser cannons. These are just the forward-facing weapons. There's also a twin blaster cannon as a tail gun. All of this is on the standard model of Lambda. If you bought one from Cygnus instead of Cinar, it gets better. 10 laser cannons mounted somewhere. It's a similar story for the Theta class from Episode 3. That has a pair of quad laser cannons and a laser cannon in the tail. When we compare this weaponry to the Upsilon, there are 2 issues. First, the lack of a tail gun. These shuttles are not agile enough to keep enemies in front of them. Second, the fixed mount laser cannons. To be entirely fair, this applies to all the Greek shuttles. The Lambda and Theta have their barrels fixed forward, but that's the laser cannons. The Lambda has blasters too. These have a mount that lets them pivot on at least one axis. The Lambda always has better firing arcs than the others. A blaster cannon that hits the target is better than a miss from a laser cannon. That covers almost every system on these shuttles, with one notable exception: the wings. These are by far the most distinctive feature on the Lambda shuttle. For everything in its family tree, those are defined by the wings. How do they differ from the original Lambda design? For example, the Theta class is missing the vertical wing. The Upsilon also has only 2 wings. What really sets this one apart is the wing geometry. On the original Lambda, the wings create a triangular formation. The 2 lower wings fold upwards when it comes in to land. Otherwise, the Lambda would need extremely long landing legs. It would also take up more horizontal space than it needs to. This design is copied directly into the Theta class. The wings are a different shape, but take the same position. Upsilon is a different beast entirely. The hinges work differently, the range of motion is different. Even the landing gear placement is unrecognizable. More distinctive than anything is the wing angle. Unlike the others, the Upsilon has limited motion. Fully extended, the Lambda has well below horizontal. Upsilon cannot lower the wings to even be flat. They are always angled with the tips upwards, above the hull. The other position also has tighter limits. Lambda and Theta can fold beyond vertical. In the stowed position, the wings slope inwards. The points almost meet at the very top. Upsilon wings reach vertical and stop there. One consequence is the visual effect. Upsilon shuttles always look like an animal. You might think of a bird, a bat, a pterodactyl. This is almost guaranteed to be intentional. Many planets have a flying predator. That basic outline will be unsettling for almost everyone. It's an interesting insight into the First Order. The Empire was happy with a purely mechanical design. Lambda is intimidating because it's an Imperial shuttle. Upsilon is designed for psychological warfare. Its shape is a weapon to damage morale. However, that doesn't really justify the wings. These are not small parts of the shuttle. Even on the Theta, they will be a significant weight. The Lambda's wings and hinge might weigh as much as the hull. Upsilon takes this to an entirely new level. A single Upsilon wing might outmass the central hull. For a structure this size, it absolutely needs to be functional. The most obvious answer is aerodynamics. Perhaps the wings help when flying through the air. Wings are known to do that. There is one big problem with the aerodynamic answer. Generally, we expect wings on an aeroplane to be horizontal. Not perfectly flat, but a lot closer than these shuttles. You would not design wings this way if they were primarily aerodynamic. They might be better than nothing, but lift is not their purpose. Repulsor lifts already solve the problem of staying in the air. For the original Lambda, it's not clear what the wings are for. This has led to a fair bit of speculation. We also have some official answers, but those are for later. One design factor doesn't require any lore to understand. It's very obvious just by looking at the ship and thinking.
What a piece of junk!
Let's take the Lambda in its folded configuration. All 3 wings are on top of the fuselage. The engines are behind the cockpit, at the back of the ship. Anyone can tell this is not balanced. There is an awful lot of weight on top of the ship. This version would not fly straight. When the wings unfold, that problem goes away. Much the same logic applies to the Theta-class shuttle. Unlike the Lambda, there is no vertical stabilizer. That seems like a minor change, but it throws off the balance. On the Lambda, its wings are below the centerline. That actually creates a pretty good balance. Without the vertical wing, the Theta is less perfect. It's not completely implausible, but it is distinctly inferior. That's probably intentional, though. This is a precursor, and the Lambda improves upon this design. Now let's compare this to the Upsilon design. The feature that makes it look unique is the wings staying above the centerline. It only takes one glance to know this is not balanced. Perhaps it can work in atmosphere, but not in space. To make matters worse, the Upsilon has much heavier wings than the others. For this design to work, you would need to balance the thrust and weight. One option would be adding a vertical wing underneath. The other is to add smaller engines somewhere on the wings. A good example of this is the V-19 Torrent starfighter. At first glance, this looks terribly unbalanced. The engines are at the very top, with 3 wings below. Someone noticed this problem with the design. That's why the V-19 has a 3rd engine below the others. It may not be perfectly balanced, but it's trying to be. That would be the simplest way to balance the Upsilon. It keeps the same outline from a distance, far less obtrusive than adding a 3rd wing. You just need to balance the engine size against the wing weight. Balance isn't the only reason to have folding wings. These exist on Earth, mostly for aircraft carriers. If you fold up the wings, you can hold more ships in the same space. That's why the Lambda and Theta wings fold. In the stowed configuration, these are still quite tall, but hangars are usually quite tall as well. More important is the floor space it takes up. That will usually be the limit on how tightly you can pack your shuttles. The Upsilon is different from the other two. Unlike the others, it has no convenient mode. When the wings are spread, it becomes absurdly wide. When the wings are vertical, it becomes absurdly tall. Those wings already had a lot of height to them when lowered. In the storage position, the entire wing length becomes height. We just mentioned that hangars are tall, but this is excessive. Upsilon wings might cause real problems when docking. Its designers agree with that, so they've already fixed it. Wings on the Lambda and Theta only pivot. They rotate into and out of position. Upsilon wings have a hinge and another system. These are also telescopic wings. When landing, the wingtips retract toward the hull. That should reduce the height to about half the wing length. There will be some losses, so maybe they drop to 60% length. The good news is that it solves the wing length problem. Bad news? As always, it's a trade-off. Solid wings would be more durable. The Upsilon is more heavy and complex than it needs to be. Believe it or not, this does appear in the movie. It's just that you're looking at black on black on black. But we've already discussed the lighting deficiencies. It seems likely that most people know about this from the cross-sections book. It was only after reading that we bothered to look. Lo and behold, retractable wings. The surprising part is that they aren't exactly telescopic. In the movie, we can see a slab sliding over the inside of the wing. That would be the wingtip being stowed. Instead of sliding into the wing, it moves down beside. Each design has its own problems. Telescopic wings would need to be hollow. That vastly reduces how strong they can be. It also means the middle of the wing is full of empty space. The alternative isn't much better. Sliding the wingtip beside the root removes the hollow part. That greatly increases the potential strength. You can't use all of that space inside the wing, though. It needs to have room for the wing retraction mechanism. In the end, the movie picked the better execution of this idea. Officially, these wings have a lot of machinery, that is, more than the hinges and movable tips. At the far end, we have powerful sensor arrays. There are FTL comm systems, both subspace and HoloNet. As a bonus, you get sensor jammers and homing missile jammers. If there's one spread the First Order enjoys, it would be jam.
Jam the speeders. I can't, sir. Why not?
They like jam on shuttles, on speeders, even Star Destroyers. Experiments with horse jam have been problematic. At the base of the wings, we have completely different systems, primarily defensive ones, deflectors and armor. But that's not all. There's a warp vortex stabilizer, useful on the Enterprise, but what's it doing here?
Take us out of here, Mr. Riker. Aye, sir. Warp 2, helm.
The wings include repulsor lifts, which does make perfect sense. Oddly, the heavy laser cannons are also wing-mounted. This is not a feature found on the Theta class. Lambda shuttles do have their much lighter blaster cannons on the wings. All of this is rather strange. It's as if half the ship lives outside the fuselage. If the reactor and engines were moved, it would be all in the wings. Shielding has always been speculated as part of the Lambda wings. It's one of the ideas that might explain the movement. At the circus, we prefer balance and hangar space. However, the Theta does confirm the shielding answer. The cross-sections provide a diagram of its different modes. When landed, the shields are disabled. In flight mode, they are active, broadly spread. With folded wings, shield energy is concentrated. To the degree that this changes anything, it doesn't seem too useful. What benefit does one get from broadly spread shields? We do learn that the vestigial dorsal wing is a shield generator. This also applies to the root of the other two wings. On the Theta class, the rest of the wing is thermal. There are heat sinks to store heat, and radiators to get rid of it. Something similar applies to the Lambda class. The wings include shield generators and heat sinks. This aspect is notably missing from the Upsilon. It has shields, jammers, comms, and high-power sensors. Not to mention the engines and weapons. Yet for some reason, absolutely no heat management. This is definitely a mistake, and not in universe. If that were the case, we'd hear about Upsilons melting. Another oddity to the Upsilon is the landing gear. As we mentioned, it seems like half the ship is in the wings. That holds true here as well. The ship sits on its wings. At the bottom of each wing, there are 2 landing legs. There's also one on the hull, almost as an afterthought. That produces a 5-point set of landing gear. Not unprecedented in Star Wars. The Falcon also happens to have 5 landing legs. With how heavy these wings are, they would need their own support. The Upsilon is strange, but this choice makes sense. If we compare it to the other shuttles, those are a different kind of odd. Instead of the 5 legs, they only have 2. This started on the Lambda, then was copied over to the Theta. Those 2 legs emerge from the sides of the hull. On the Lambda, they splay out somewhat. To be perfectly honest, this design is terrible. It has small feet and needs to balance. Normally, tripod landing gear is preferred. That way it creates a stable platform on any terrain. Going up to 4 or 5 legs isn't bad, as long as they have terrain sensors.
I told him to plant the beacon and move away, not stand there holding it.
Things were improved on the Theta class. It still only has 2 legs, but these have long skids. Not quite as good as a tripod, but this should be stable. The legs are also placed directly under the hull. It's about as good a fix as you can create in the prequels. The design was improved in our universe and regressed in theirs. Technically, the Upsilon landing gear might be the best of them. Certainly, the Theta and Upsilon are most fitting. Each one is adequate for the ship it's used on. Really, that statement sums up the Upsilon-class shuttle. The design has its fair share of shortcomings. There are some strange choices that aren't necessarily wrong. Other parts are absolutely wrong, and that should be obvious. The Upsilon is more complicated than it needs to be. It's missing a couple of basic features. But all things considered, it might be the best vehicle in the movie. We can repair most of its problems without much effort. All in all, the Upsilon shuttle is decent. With that, we have finished Kylo's section of the movie. We have it on good authority, this bloke turns up later, but we'll have to examine that when we get there. Let's just continue through the movie and see what we find. Our next video on this topic will cover some wasted potential, something that could have been glorious, but wasn't. As always, TFA is not our main series. We'll do an episode every once in a while. A nice change of pace from just doing Star Wars all the time. We hope to see you in our next video. Thanks for watching and have a good night. There are 2 ways to support us. Become a patron at patreon.com/thebreadcircus, or become a YouTube member by clicking the join button. Alternatively, subscribe, like, and comment. Only the former options guarantee that your name lives on in history. Everything else is embarrassing YouTubey stuff.
What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian. My tricks don't work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.